Safety Committee meeting. This is our first meeting of the year, so Happy New Year to all. We're going to get started here today. First, I ask Kim, roll call, please.
Thank you. Council President Boyce.
Here.
Councilmember Fincher. Councilmember Kaur.
Here.
Councilmember Larmer.
Here.
Councilmember Michaud.
Here.
Councilmember Thomas.
Here.
Councilmember Troutner.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. We have 4 things on our agenda plus the adjournment makes number 5. We'll get started tonight with approval of agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Been moving second in discussion. Seeing none. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, let the record show the agenda is approved as is. So first on item number 4, business, we have approval of the minutes from December 6th.
Mr. Chair, I would move for approval of the minutes.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Let the record show unanimous pass. We'll move on to item number B, payment of the bills.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I would move for approval of payment of the bills.
That was second, motion and a second. Any discussion?
He's laughing.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Let the record show unanimous pass. Is that missing something? What are we smiling about here?
They're laughing at me.
All right,
Just laughing because you're laughing.
just laughing.
Come on up, Chris.
All right, we're going to move on to item number 6, which is information only on the 2023 insurance renewal update. And we have Chris Hill tonight. Chris, thank you.
Council President Boyce, members of the City Council, good afternoon. This is the kind of semi-annual update on insurance. First thing I'm going to say is this is better news than I gave you a year ago. So let's just start off with that. I think that's a good thing. I think you'll find it's generally pretty good news. So kind of currently in the industry, some of the factors we're dealing with are inflation, and that's both the kind of inflation, economic inflation we've been seeing lately. The industry is suffering a bit with that, but also social inflation, which I've shared with you kind of what that's about, which is that, jury verdicts of multi-million dollars, we see them billion-dollar settlements, and those issues really affect the insurance industry because for the most part, that's where the money comes from that covers those things. Also, there are more of these lawsuits, and the settlements, again, just continue to get bigger. Insurers are looking really to adequately price their risks, and what that means for us, when I began to fill out our application for excess coverage this year, the number of questions that I was asked, it went far beyond what I had ever previously been asked. There were probably 50 questions about our dams, and we had never had any questions asked about dams before, about our hearing examiner, so questions related to economic and community development. Never had any questions asked about those sorts of issues before. So what they're really trying to do is find out as much as they can about their insureds and try to price then the risk that those issues present accordingly. I just spent a lot of time gathering all of that information as late as about mid-December on some of it. And then really a note for July 1, not that it applies to the liability and worker comp cyber, but Hurricane Ian, the effects of that hurricane in Florida are going to be seen when we renew our property coverage in July. The reinsurance rates were up like 50% in those markets. And so I don't know what that's going to look like yet, but the indications are it's going to be pretty serious. So this is a chart that I've shown you every year for the last few years. I've updated it for 2021. Again, these are the sort of verdict and settlement inflation, where these verdicts and settlements are going. And you'll see that, just the trend line continues to go up, factoring in now the 2021 numbers for verdicts and settlements. And this is national information. So Locally, we've been continuing to be impacted by the market. And again, in Washington, there's not a tort cap like there's in Oregon. It's relatively low, $750,000. There's no tort cap in Washington, and so insurers have to price for that. Local governments are really being affected by these kinds of rate increases. The average increase for cities of the Washington Cities Insurance Authority is 40% this year. You may have seen there was an article last week in the Seattle Times about Spokane County, and they've had some some jury verdicts recently that were quite significant. Last summer, there was a jail death verdict for $27 million. And then just 2 weeks ago, a sheriff's deputy in an employment case, there was a verdict of $20 million against the county in that case. And in that particular case, there is likely an additional $6 million worth of cost that's above and beyond their insurance. So they could have a $6 million impact to their general fund unrelated with no insurance compensation in that case. So pretty significant stuff there. Insurance rates, their premium went from $2.2 million up to $3.4 million in 1 year. Yeah, really significant stuff for Spokane County. And again, the cost of trials to defend continues to go up. So this chart shows our insurance, the layers we have of insurance. The green at the bottom is our retention. Above that is Safety National, which is our primary excess carrier, $5 million worth of coverage. And then the yellow is Allied World Insurance. They have two different layers with an intervening layer with Hallmark Insurance. We have a total of $25 million worth of coverage. It's the same this year as it was last year. So we're really fortunate that we can stay with these same carriers and that they're continuing to insure us in our liability program. So the significant elements are that our retention remains at $1.25 million. So per claim or lawsuit, we cover the first $1.25 million. And I work with Michelle and Paula to ensure that we have adequate funds, also using an actuary to project those loss costs for us. The premium cost increased 21% from $1.14 million to $1.37 million. Our increase last year was also 21%, but as you may remember, we had that $500,000 increase in our retention. So a little bit of good news here, only 21%. That's like the worst news I'm going to share with you. Really, that is the worst news I'm going to share with you. This chart is the sort of our history of both premiums and our retention since we were with the WCIA through 2010, and then we entered the program we're currently in. The premiums have gradually increased over time. It has our self-insured retention up to the 1.377 we'll be paying here in 2023. Moving on to excess worker compensation, some really good news here. We're staying with Safety National as our carrier. We've had them for 26 years now. The premium increase, 1.5% or $2,300. It's like really great news. Super happy about that considering our increase last year was about $50,000. So this is really great news. And then finally on cyber, even better news. We retain all of the same limits and coverages, no increase in premium. You'll see the initials MFA, multi-factor authentication. That's the real key to the good news. We've all, I think, been affected by multi-factor authentication, right? We put in those numbers, but our insurer loves that. I want to give a shout out to IT Director Mike Carrington, James Endicott, our IT security manager, and Joe Bennett. They implemented MFA in March. Our insurer loved it, and that's why we're flat going forward this year. So great stuff there. Questions?
Okay, thank you, Chris. Better news than last year overall. Councilmember Troutner?
Thank you, Council President. Thank you very much for this little bit of good information for a change. How do we budget for this? So when you say, last year we had a higher increase, this year we didn't have an increase. Do we budget for that worst-case scenario? So,
That's a good question. What we do, we use an actuary. And so what they do, and I work with Paula and Michelle on this, we provide them our loss information. And what they can do is, your historical loss information is the best way to determine what your future losses are going to look like. So they're going to say, okay, what is the probability and number of losses that are going to occur within the city's retention? So in that $1.25 million. And they give a range of what those losses can be. And we fund, our policy about that is to fund to about 75% of the confidence level. So again, working with Michelle and Paula, we project what those costs are going to be. And they do a pretty good job of coming up with that number. So it's within what the budget has been projected for next year.
Any other questions? Councilmember Michelle.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Chris, for this presentation. My question is, you mentioned some pretty large settlements, and so I'm wondering how you get to $20 million for the city of Kent as the best number.
Oh, and that's a really good question. We're at actually 25 million. Spokane County has 20 million. Some of it is, there are cost implications to how much what the cost is going to be to even get coverage above that. We don't typically, we've never had a loss greater than $5 million. So some of what we're doing is we're paying for some insurance for that single, has never yet happened, catastrophic kind of loss. So some of our insurance premium every year is going to those insurers who we've never utilized at all. That's a number that, in working with an actuary, they can project out. Again, once maybe every 20 years, you might have a loss that's up in that stratosphere. But for the most part, all of our losses are staying within that primary layer, that $5 million layer.
Okay, any other question for Chris? Okay, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
I did just want to, say that I'm going to be retiring on March 31st, and it's been a pleasure working, certainly here at the City of Kent. It's been my dream. I've been here for 26 years as a risk manager. It's really been a pleasure, and it's been a pleasure working with all of you. Thank you so much, all right?
Well, we're going to give you a nice understanding. How about that? Thank you. Appreciate it, Chris. That's how you drop the mic. All righty. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it, and good luck to you. We'll move on to item number D. Kelly Peterson is on agreement with Express Employment Professional Service.
Good afternoon, Council President Boyce, members of the committee. It's a tough act to follow. It's been a pleasure working with you, Chris. I look forward to the next few months. So, before you is a motion for a contract with Express Employment Professionals. This is for an administrative project coordinator, somebody who's currently working on the project for the Federal Link extension. The Federal Link extension will extend Sound Transit's light rail from the Angle Lake Station just south of the Seattle-Tacoma International Airport down to the city of Federal Way. It's about a 7.8 mile long section. About 3 miles are located within the city of Kent. The project has 3 stations and 3 new garages along its extension, 2 of which are located in the city of Kent. So we come to you with this administrative project coordinator position. It would be fully funded through the staffing agreement that the city of Kent has with Sound Transit, and allows us to retain staff. It's a temporary staff. It retains the continuity of the project. This person has the history, the process. We have a good relationship with all of our staff, and this person helps take care of the entire department. This contract would be this year. And depending on what happens with Sound Transit, you'll be getting an update tonight at Council Workshop. But as far as the exact date of the opening, we may end up doing another extension next year. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
So this fully paid through Sound Transit?
Yes,
this
sir.
Position. Okay. Can't argue with that. Any question, council member? Okay, see it then. I'm going to ask for a motion, please. Who did I pass that to?
No, I've got this jail.
Mr. President.
Do you have it?
I do.
What are you waiting on?
Well,
Motion, please.
thank you, Mr. President. I move to authorize the mayor to sign a consultant services agreement with Express Employment Professionals in an amount not to exceed $125,000 for staffing services to support Sound Transit's Federal Way Link Extension Project, subject to final terms and conditions acceptable to the city attorney.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Let the record show unanimous pass. Thank you, Mr. Peterson.
Don't leave.
Okay. Move on to item number E, which is agreement with the Summit Food Service. We talked about this before, so Diane going to come up again and talk to us about this here? Diane, excuse me.
Commander.
Hello. Hi, Council. So I'm here on behalf of the Police Department to talk about two contracts that the jail is looking at. The first one is the Summit Foods. Neither one of these are new contracts. They're just the end of their term, and we're moving on with them for new terms. Summit has been providing food service for our inmates for over 30 years at our jail. So we're looking at entering a new contract with them that would be 5 years. It'll start February 1st. Of this year, and will run through January 31st of 2028. The budget impact on this is about approximately $233,000 annually. And that is it that I have for the Summit Food contract.
Did this come to us before and there was some adjustment made, but I don't remember what the adjustment was. Sorry.
Yeah, so they had came forward and because of all of the price increases, just with what's going on in the economy, they were raising their prices 30%. So we started to look at who else was out there. We looked at 3 different vendors, and Summit still was better priced than the other 3 that we looked at.
Okay.
So that's what we talked about.
Thanks for reminding me. It was last year, so that's why I forgot. Even though it's been a few months, I still forgot. So.
First thing to go.
Okay. Any question for Diane? Any question? See them, ask for a motion, please.
Chair, I move to authorize the mayor to sign a 5-year contract with Summit Food Services Management, LLC, for food services at the Kent Corrections Facility at an estimated 2023 cost of $233,688, subject to final contract terms and conditions acceptable to the police chief and city attorney.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Let the record show unanimous pass. Thank you.
Thank you. The next one that I have is our Federal Way contract. So this will be our second term with Federal Way. We house for their inmates. We guarantee 5 beds for them. And it's a revenue generating contract, so it brings about $301,000 guaranteed. And then if they choose, and we have the space to add additional beds, it would go up from there. So the base revenue would be $301,000 on that. Again, this is our second term with them. Our first contract was 3 years. This one will be 5, and it'll start in February and go until 2028.
Thank you. Any questions?
I do have a question.
Please.
Have we ever needed those 5 beds? Have we ever been in a situation where we could have used them ourselves?
5 is a pretty reasonable number for us to work with. We've definitely cut them off at 5 to where they've wanted to bring more, and we have said no. Federal Way has been really good about working with us. If we just can't accommodate anymore, then they have a lot of other resources that they utilize. So good question. We also have been funded $100,000 each year for contracting with if we have long-term inmates to send elsewhere, we have that resource as well.
That's correct. Okay, great. Thank you.
May I?
Please.
Thank you. So, Commander, these are all misdemeanors?
That's correct.
Okay, so we don't get a hard criminal from Federal Way?
Yeah, good question. Yes, they are. They mirror our current booking criteria that we have.
All right, thanks.
Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Did I do it already?
Make a motion, please.
Oh. I'm not feeling, I don't have my A game, I got my B game, so help me out, guys, please, I need it. So, please.
Okay. Council President, I move to authorize the mayor to sign a new year interlocal agreement with the City of Federal Way for jail services, subject to final contract terms and conditions acceptable to the police chief and city attorney.
Second.
So I got you all messed up too,
Yeah,
don't I? Sorry. Got a motion, second, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Let the record show unanimous pass. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Councilmember Larmer. Okay, item G, we talked about this before, but I think Pat has some adjustment.
Good evening, Council. I actually have a walk-on item tonight, and that is an ordinance to make it illegal for Chris Hills to resign. How's that? What do you think about that? We'll
Got a
get the law
second?
department working on it right away.
We got a second already.
Okay, well, good evening. I have before you an ordinance amendment. It's an amendment to the Salary Commission ordinance that you passed at the last meeting. There was a need for clarification of one of the sections that differentiates the salary between regular council members and the council president. It's in one section of our ordinance, but it's not in another. So if you look on page 76 of your packet, it shows the changes there, and it just simply differentiates it and makes it consistent with the first section of the ordinance, which talks about that same issue and does say that the council president will have a different salary, or has a potential to have a different salary than the rest of the council members. So minor change just to make it very clear, unquestionable, and that's all that is. If approved, it'll go on consent tonight, and we'll be done with that.
Question?
Please.
So if we vote this down, then has to go back to regular layman salary?
It's not about me, Les.
All right, he's right, council president salary.
Okay, any questions, concerns? Have a motion, please.
Thank you, Council President. I move to adopt ordinance number 4457 to make a housekeeping amendment to the Kent City Code 2.65.050 that clarifies the Independent Salary Commission will review and set the salaries of the City Council, the Council President, and the Mayor.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Let the record show unanimous pass.
Thank you.
Move on to item number H, our favorite, finance. And our favorite finance person to bring the good news, Michelle.
Good afternoon, Council. Michelle Ferguson with the Finance Department, and I'll be presenting the November 2022 monthly financial report. Okay, we're going to start off with page 1 of the report. And so highlighted in that orangey kind of yellowish color is what the adjusted budget turned out to be at year end. And that was showing that we were going to use $11.7 million of the fund balance, basically. But based on estimated actuals, we're projecting that we will actually add over $2.5 million to fund balance. So that would leave the ending fund balance at 2022 year end at $50 million or 37.7%. So you can see on this slide, these are the general fund revenues. And as noted in every other month, sales tax is going to be the largest contributor to that at estimating about $6.4 million over budget, and charges for services came in over $2 million over budget. We do have a couple of lines that are going to be coming in under budget. B&O may or may not, but it's hard to tell with Q4 not being due yet, as well as annual filers. So that number may not be negative when we get the final numbers in. Fines and forfeitures, that's just a trend that keeps continuing. But transfers in, you'll notice a $2.2 million variance, and that is because we have a couple of ARPA-funded projects that we're not going to do the transfer in at year end. We're going to wait, and in 2023, we'll come forward with a budget change to move those the revenues and expenditures into a project, so they don't have to be carried over in the operating budget. So the projects will still continue, they just aren't going to be going into the general fund. And for expenditures, every department is seeming like they are going to be coming in under budget, which is great. We have 4 departments that are have a higher favorable balance, and that's going to be ECD, Human Resources, Court, and Parks. So ECD and Parks, part of the reason that they have such a large favorable balance is because those are the two that have the ARPA-funded projects within them. The other two, Human Resources and Court, the main reason that they are under budget is because of salary savings for positions, full-time and part-time positions that weren't filled all year.
Kirk, I'm about ready to give you credit for really managing your department, but it's about the ARPA funding.
Okay, so we're going to take a look at a couple of the other funds that we have, and these are just kind of showing why the budget to actuals are having quite a large variance. So for the street fund, the revenues budgeted has a large difference from the estimated actuals, and that is partially due to the garbage utility tax that has come in over budget by a couple $100,000, as well as there's $2.3 million of transportation impact fund fees that have come into the fund. Those will fall into fund balance and then be used in future years once they've designated projects for those use of those funds. The lodging tax, that has a large expenditure variance, and that is because we had, at the beginning of the year, if you recall, we transferred in some funds for the ARPA revenue loss, and those just, the $272,000 that is spent so far this year, that is on par with what is normally spent. So the extra amount will fall into fund balance and can be used in future years. The Human Services Fund, that has a over $1.3 million variance in expenditures. That has the main revenues that are in that fund are for the housing sales tax that we receive. 60% of that is restricted and transferred into a fund, but the rest of it is used for other human services and the co-responder program, and those programs quite haven't gotten up and running at full steam yet, so any unspent revenues will fall into fund balance for future use. This slide, drainage. Revenues came in over budget and expenditures came under budget, so just overall, they were planned to use $4.6 million in fund balance, but instead estimated to only use $2.7 million. Fleet services, again, plan to use fund balance, but in reality, they will actually have a surplus, and that is because of the ordering for the vehicles. A lot of them have been ordered and they just have not been received. They're hoping to get them in late February, early March, but it just kind of depends on how those turn out. And the last one highlighted is unemployment. We had planned to use $70,000 of fund balance, and in reality, we'll probably get closer to $50 million added to fund balance, and that is because judgment and damages have been coming in very low. It's actually half of the expenditures that we spent last year. That's been a surprising, pleasant surprise. Are there any questions?
No, it's a good report. Overall, 2022 looked like a good year, but we do have that, even though 37.7% fund balance, we all know we got some tough years in front of us, right? It sounds like a good thing now, but you know, it's 3 to 5 years out, we got some big challenge in front of us.
So the one thing I want to mention is that we were under budgeted in 2022, and we did correct the 23 budget to kind of not have such a high variance next year, so we can't count on there being an extra $6 million in sales tax above budget.
Councilmember Kaur.
Thank you, Council President. Michelle, I had a question about a previous slide, please. So fleet services, so is it because we have not paid for these vehicles yet, or have we've already paid for them?
We've ordered them, but they have not been received.
Okay, so we haven't made the final payment. Okay, that is the reason.
Only when the cars actually come in. We
Got it. Thank you.
Any other question for Michelle? I don't have any. Good report. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Okay, and our last report for today is on the utility shutout, and Molly is going to come back and give us more update. How you doing, Molly?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Good, good.
All right. Well, good afternoon, Council President Boyce and council members. I'm Molly Bartlemay. I'm the City of Kent Customer Service Manager, and tonight I'm just kind of giving you another update on what's going on with our City of Kent water utility accounts. Thank you. So on the agenda this evening, I'm going to start with some good news and go over a utility grant that we received that took care of some of our payment plans. go over kind of our standard delinquency and water shutoff process, provide you some updated shutoff counts, and then just give you an update on our plans to move forward. So to start out with some good news, we did apply for and received grant from the Department of Commerce that were used to pay off our remaining utility payment plan balances. The grant was provided to address low-income customer arrearages compounded by the COVID-19 pandemic and the related economic downturn that were occurred between March 1st, 2020 and December 31st, 2021. In that time period, that was the time that we suspended turning off utility accounts. There was lots of restrictions and criteria for this grant funding. There was a low-income criteria. One of the criteria was that you could be approved if you attested to having a financial impact due to COVID-19. And luckily, the payment arrangement application we came up with and customers had to sign, that attestation was on that form. So in the end, we were able to apply over $17,000 to the remaining 36 utility accounts that still were on payment plans. So at the height of it, I know we had over 180 accounts, so we were kind of disappointed that by the time we received the funding, that we couldn't use it to help as many people as we wanted, but we tried to, keep the positive thoughts on. We were glad that we could help those 36 remaining accounts. They were really challenging, these payment plans, for our customers to pay your current charges plus a portion of your past due was challenging, and it also took a lot of staff time to manage those. So we're really glad to be starting 2023 with all of those long-term payment arrangements cleared out.
So Molly, I'm sorry, so there was 17,000 that was applied to 36 utilities, so 17,000 applied out of how much? What was the total?
So by the time we received the funding, we had 36 accounts left, still on payment plans, and the balance of those 36 accounts was just over $17,000.
And that was paid? Mm-hmm. So we have no one on the list left?
No one's on the list.
Really?
Yeah. So
wow, that is awesome.
And when you look at those 36 accounts at the end of December 31st, 2021, those accounts owed over $65,000. So you can see during the payment plan, they really got those numbers down. But it was really nice. I was able to talk to a few of them at the counter when they came up, starting to pay, and to tell them, good news that those are paid. So again, we would have loved to help more, but those 36 customers I know we're glad to get those cleared out.
That's awesome. Do you know what the biggest bill out of the 17,000? Well, do you know roughly what it might have been?
Let's say we had one. Not exactly, but I'm going to say close to $1,200.
Okay.
Some were maybe only, $100. It really, there was a pretty wide range there. But yeah, definitely.
Help the family. That's great.
Oh, yeah.
Good news. Thank you.
Yeah, that was great.
Councilman Fincher, I'm sorry. Yes.
Thank you. So with that 17,000, was this like a reimbursement thing? You fill it out and this is how much they paid, then you submit that? Would there have been money left over had we had more people that you could have paid more?
Yes, I feel good about we maximized it to the best that we could. We actually could have, if we would have been able to, there was up to $100,000. But unfortunately, by the time those funds were received, the restrictions on there were really tight. So we maximized it to the best that we could. But unfortunately, by the time this came around, the majority of our payment arrangements were one-year payment arrangements, and a lot of them started in September of last year. Some of them could go up to 18 months, so a lot of them were already cleared and no longer were eligible to receive that. And then for the Department of Commerce, we paid the accounts and then submitted the request to them, and so it was all covered by the Department of Commerce.
Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah. So as we talk about returning to our standard procedures, I thought it'd be helpful to go through what really our standard process looks like. So starting with your regular monthly bill. So we bill monthly. We bill at the end of every month for that month. So for example, the January 2023 bill is going to be, I think we're generated on January 26th. So when we generate that bill, if you haven't paid the previous bill, so for example, if you haven't paid December or prior, your new bill is going to have a delinquent message on it. And on the due date, you're going to have your previous balance, there's going to be a due date listed, and then your current balance. If your previous balance isn't paid by that date, that's when that shutoff notice is issued. So the following day after that date, we run a report and generate that notice, and at that time, a $10 fee is added to the account. That water shutoff notice has a date on it saying when that account needs to be paid, that previous balance. And if it's not paid by that time, then the account is subject to shutoff. When we do the actual shutoff, that morning we have our official shutoff list as the meter readers are leaving to turn off the accounts. That's when a $45 fee is added to each of those accounts. If the account is shut off, payment in full is required to reconnect service. And really, again, pre-COVID, we were shutting off accounts when you were at 2 months delinquent. So essentially that previous bill is delinquent and now your current bills become delinquent because we're beyond the due date. We do allow payment arrangements once every 6 months. So if a customer calls us and needs a little time, we can definitely work with them. And then the other thing we do is if we have received information from an agency that they're going to be receiving a pledge, even if we haven't received that pledge, we note the account that a pledge is coming and then the account won't be shut off.
Do you ever waiver the fee anytime?
What's that?
Do you ever waiver the fee anytime?
The $10, the
$10 and got a $45 fee, right?
we do have a policy that we will remove one $10 late fee, especially going back to when we restarted the fees during the moratorium. There was no late fees assessed, but we recognize that this was kind of getting people back to regular, so we will remove one $10 fee. The $45 fee cannot be removed unless there was an error on part. Doesn't really happen, but if for some reason, I don't know, maybe if your payment was applied to another account in error or something, then we could definitely look at it. But in general, we can't remove those fees.
Thank you.
So as we talk about returning to standard procedures and kind of what that history looks like. So again, before March 2020, accounts were shut off at 2 months delinquent. When March 2020 hit, we suspended all water shutoffs and then resumed them again in January 2022. So it was almost 2 years that we went without shutting off water. Obviously, when we resumed shutoffs, there was no way we could go back to those previous procedures because there was just so many delinquent accounts. So when we started turning off again, we started with accounts that were 4 months past due or higher and really are really delinquent payment arrangement accounts. By January, we'd had people sign up for payment arrangements in September, and they hadn't made any payments, so they were supposed to start paying current past due charges. So it really took us January, February, March to kind of get everybody on payment arrangements and work with our customers. And then by April, we'd been able to transition from 4 months past due to 3 months past due. But again, at that time too, we were still managing all those payment arrangements and working with those customers, trying to keep them caught up. So we were shutting off accounts that were then 3 months past due and then working on those delinquent payment arrangements. By November and December, again, kind of, based on capacity and starting to ramp up and to start going from 3 months to 2 months, we were finally getting some capacity, but with November and December, with the holidays and the horrible weather in December, that just really wasn't the time to start ramping up shutoffs. And then if we go to the next slide, these are similar numbers than I've provided before, just kind of using 2019 as a comparison. So the shutoff notice counts, that's when we actually generate that mailer and a $10 fee is added to the account. So, it really varies, but on average, there's about a difference of 200 accounts there. So compared now to 2019, on average, we're sending out about 200 more notices a month. And then the accounts shut off, that just kind of shows you that trend. And again, in December, that horrible freeze, it wasn't just that day we had the capacity to go out and shut accounts off, but the question was, would we have the staffing to get back out there and turn them on? So we definitely made the call that it was best just to do, we did a couple accounts that were really close by and some that were really payment arrangements that had fallen behind. So as far as our plan to move forward, our next steps, again, we've cleared out those payment arrangements, and really that final step for us to get back to pre-COVID is to really get back to those accounts, that 2 month delinquent mark. I think I ran some numbers today that I really think speaks to the difference. So when we do shutoffs, we actually break the city in half. We've kind of got our west side accounts and our east side accounts, so we can really have our meter readers focus on one portion of the city to be efficient. And so when we ran the reports this morning, if you're looking at accounts that are over 3 months delinquent just on our west side, and that's about 8,000 accounts. There's 79 accounts. If you look at that same if you run that report again and looking at accounts that are 2 months delinquent, it's 276. So again, it's almost 200 more accounts. And I will tell you that today is actually a shut-off due date. So I was walking by, I know we were getting lots of payments, so I know those numbers are going to go down drastically, but not enough for us to just, jump and go to the 2-month account. So our plan is really to start folding some more of those 2-month accounts, and we know we've kind of got to get back there. We definitely had some staffing capacity issues, and again, we recognized that people were still struggling returning from COVID, but so that's going to be our goal in 2023 to finally kind of do that last step and get back to our standard procedures. And again, I can't say enough about how well the staff over in customer service has done through all this, and their empathy that they've showed with their customers, and being flexible as all these things have changed. So we're fully staffed over there, and we've got a really good group. So I'm confident that things are going to be good going forward.
What's that last bullet? I read it twice. I'm not sure I know what it means. So that last bullet, what did that tell me?
So we're going to try to transition back to, right now we're doing those accounts that are really three months behind, but we're going to try to switch that down to 2 months behind. And we know that we can't do that overnight, that it's going to take a few cycles, and it's definitely, again, that capacity, because the last thing we want to do is shut off accounts and not have the capacity for the people to take the calls and the payments, and also to have the staff to get out there and get them back on.
Okay, great. Any questions for Molly, team? Yes, please, Councilmember Michelle.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you so much for the presentation, Molly. I'm going to ask every time I see you, any update on being able to do auto pay online?
That is a great question, and one that we get a lot. I know our billing system, I'm going to say it was 1991, I think it's from. So I know that that's going to be something in the future, getting that replaced, and that's definitely paperless billing. I feel like a lot of times our staff has to work harder because we don't have some of these items in place, and we know that a lot of customers are wanting things that they're used to getting from other utility providers. So definitely something that we're going to want. I mean, no doubt in a new system, and I think that's pretty commonplace now with any new billing system to have those capabilities.
Okay. This in Chad department, right?
What's that?
This Chad, is your department? No, where does fall in there? Oh, finance. Okay, got it. All right. Afraid to raise your hand? Okay. Any other questions? I think early on we was last year we asked to get this report pretty frequently because just want to see what's going on, I guess. What are you guys' thoughts around this? Should we still need to continue to look at this here? If so, then any thoughts, anybody? Once a quarter, every 6 months, or do you ever need to look at it anymore? Huh?
6 months. 6 months.
6 months good? Yeah. Is that possible? Maybe a team, maybe at 6 months, just kind of keep it simple. You don't need to, just kind of what's going on, okay? All righty. Thank you. Any more questions for Molly? Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Take care. That's the last item on our agenda tonight. I do want to point out I have a special guest here tonight, and this is Priscilla. Raise your hand in the front row. She's a sophomore at Kent Ridge, and she's interested in politics. So she asked me because she come and shadowed me early today, and she's going to be with us through our operation meeting plus our workshop, and then a council member, me. That's, are you sure you want to stay this long, Steve? If you want me, I want to be here. So we're very excited to have Priscilla here. So maybe if you get a moment between our meeting, just go out and chit-chat with her. She got an interesting story, and she is from KM. I remind her that, did I say Kent Ridge? I'm sorry, KM, excuse me. Royal. Yeah. So I remind her that Councilmember Thomas and Mayor both went to KM, and so I think when they first opened it, was it open? Did you open it up or what? Close enough. So, but anyway, we're happy to have you, and we all will engage with you throughout the meeting. So, with that said, we are adjourned to 5 o'clock. Thank you so much.
All right.